sweet. Give me a second. Okay, it should be coming online right about now on Facebook. So I think, hopefully. Let me just double check before we get started. Yep, okay, looks like we're up. So, oh wait, hold up. Let me make an edit before I continue forward. I can't keep camel casing heavy, so it's a problem.
Yeah, I would rather you didn't.
Yeah, that's what I hear. So, okay, perfect. So thank you for joining us today. Looks like we have a handful of people here. And so today's conversation is about really kind of building some good design principles. And I'm lucky to have with us today one of our board members, as well as one of my best friends, Stephen Darby. He goes by Darby. He is the creative director for a studio in town called Heavy, not Camel Case, and is really a great eye and mind for design. And so the goal of the conversation today, I think, is really just kind of setting a standard and understanding a standard for what makes for decent design. I'm not going to say great, because if you're not a designer and you don't really know what that means, I think maybe all you can achieve is perhaps good. I don't know. We can volley that argument in the discussion, but we'll take a look at a slide or two as well towards the back end, just to provide some thoughts on layout, or, you know, kind of things that are commonly done incorrectly. And if anyone here has a question about how they're articulating or what their design is articulating, then we can talk about that as well. So if you have questions, if you're watching this through Facebook Live, feel free to drop them in the chat on Facebook, and we will do our best to address them. And then same as in this forum here through Zoom, if you're watching here, feel free, you can either unmute or drop them in the chat and I will bring them up. So I guess we can go ahead and get started. So Darby, I'd love, if you don't mind, just to provide some background. You know, tell us rather your sort of story of becoming a designer, and really, you know, how I guess you came to be here today. Maybe not exactly today specifically, but in general, you know, what brought you to this field?
Sure. So, yeah, my name is Stephen Darby. Thank you for your warm introduction so far. I'm the creative director and partner and co-founder of a studio called Heavy. I've been doing design for a living, I guess, 20 years now. I started really young, but it's always what I've been interested in, I guess, even from a young age, and which isn't, I don't know how typical that is, but I mean, that's my story, I guess. I started heavy with Eric Ford and Jeanette Fernandez in 2013, and we kind of just focused on tech startups, you know, branding, logo design, product design, and then have gotten into, you know, campaign design and more product packaging for physical products, spaces and environments and things. So yeah, so I don't know, Ryan asked me to come and say words, so that's what brought me here today.
I dig it. As always, that's kind of how I bring people into the forum, is just, will you say some words? And I'm thankful that you're the one saying the words today. So I'd like to really start just kind of in defining, like, what is design to you? Like, what is that? What is it supposed to accomplish? I know that for business owners, we can oftentimes think about it as almost like an artistic medium, maybe thinking of stuff a little bit too literally, in terms of, you know, I want something that represents, you know, thoughtful or creative or whatever. And maybe we think like, oh, well, your job as my designer is to make me a light bulb, right? Like, I asked for these things, but really, what is design?
Well, I think at a foundational, like capital D design is about improving the environment for humans, right? Like, or for human use. I think good design has to take into account as many different pieces of that puzzle as possible. So, you know, in our modern time of design, we've seen more like sustainability as a to good design, or as a criteria by which you would measure good design. Become like sustainability as a thing has become more important to solve for. So at a high level, that's what design is to me. I think Milton Glaser, a famous designer, I guess, says design is to inform or to delight, or to inform and delight. I think that's true also. But I think at its core is to improve our surroundings in any capacity. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And so if we take a look at that, and, you know, go back to the mindset of perhaps a business owner, you know, inform or delight. I can make a flyer for my business in Microsoft PowerPoint or Microsoft Word, print that out with like little, you know, pull off tabs or whatever, and I've accomplished my goal, right? That's, I think, maybe how sometimes we see it, is that.
Yeah, well, and that's not to say, like, I think any attempt even to improve your environment is a good attempt. It's still technically designed to me. A failure of design, though, is when you don't take into account enough of those criteria, right? Like, if it's not easy to read for your audience, you failed at design. If you're in the business of informing them, it needs to be easy to get through, right? Like, these two things go hand in hand. So when it comes to, like, I mean, there's a ton of pedestrian design out there, right? Like all of the forms that you're bombarded with. Like, I voted this morning, which, I mean, the entire experience sucked, but the one thing that would be easy enough to solve is the layout of the ballot on the screen. Like, everybody interacts with millions of websites that are better designed than the ballot I saw this morning, right? But it's a matter of taking the time to assess who your audience is and empathizing with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So would you say that in order to design effectively, you need to consider your audience? Is that more or less what you're getting at?
Yeah, I'm saying you can't, you're only possibly going to get lucky if you expect to do good design and not take into account your audience.
Okay.
Like you must consider who's going to look at your, whatever it is, who's going to use it, who's going to live with it, whatever that thing is.
Okay. And so as you, like, if I'm to try to figure out what that looks like, I feel maybe there's a lot of noise in that. Like, maybe I work at a farmer's market and, one person that purchases from me says, you know what, I think your bottle should be bigger. And then another person that purchases from me and says, I wish you had travel size. And so how do you define your audience in that sense? Like, are there questions that help you get to what a norm is?
So,
or
I mean, I think in working with our clients, the clients that are going to be best served by what we do are ones that have data points that make sense on a bottom line for them, right? Like if it costs you too much per unit to get into the travel size, then that's already a disqualifier, right? Like we can talk about product design and try to figure out, is there a way to increase the sticker price of your, position it differently so that it's a premium product and you can make more per unit. That's always a conversation we're happy to have, but like you as the provider of service, you need to understand the business side for sure, right? Like, but you also have to understand the business side as it relates directly to your customer's experience. And so that's where we're helpful in trying to figure out, like, I mean, that's the role of design, not just where we're helpful, but like, that's the whole point, right? Like what do people need? What are they going to spend on it? What makes it a no-brainer? All of those things are design questions. They sound like purely business questions, but design is the output. It's the paint on the wall based on empathizing with your audience. Like you can't improve your surroundings if you don't know who's using it, right?
that makes a ton of sense. So yeah, I guess in getting to that, going back to my example of maybe a farmer's market, if I want to transition that to other mediums, does my design change? For example, I sell a product in a market, I want to get it into retail, or I sell that product in a market and I want to get that to an online forum. Should the design be the exact same thing, or how does it change? Because I mean, in theory, those are different markets.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to give away too much the secret sauce of design, right? But it's like, just empathize with your customer, and there are still critical decisions to make along the path of like product development to product market, like to rolling it out. But it literally all comes down to what your customer is going to expect, what they deserve, what they require, and what they're ultimately going to spend on it to call it their own. So like in the case of, and I see that a lot, because when you start a product, right, like you need to get it out, you need to get it shipped, you're trying to prove viability or whatever the case is, there's not a lot of time, nor is there money to spend on research, right? And like trying to figure out what's the best color palette, what's the right logo or shape or whatever, right? You're always going to have a better foot forward though if you ask who the customer is in the first place. Go, walk the same shopping path, literally and figuratively, that your ideal customer is going to take. You know what I mean? Like, you can have conversations with prospective customers before you ever put anything out. So I think all of those decisions must be balanced with the financial good of the company, but, you know, against what your customer needs and what feels right for them in their perspective, not yours as the vendor.
Okay, so just because I like the color green doesn't necessarily mean that green should be the color.
Right. No, not unless, and there are certainly cases where the entrepreneur, the person with the new product, they have developed this product because they are the target demographic, right? They are the prospective buyer. They fit that category of person. But it's in my, I don't know, I feel like you can pick those products out in real life that are not made by somebody in the demo. Like, they always look wrong. You know what I mean? Because they're not empathizing with someone else.
Okay. So what, I guess, and I'm not sure, you may have kind of answered this to a degree, but so what kind of qualifiers make the information you get from a client valid or invalid? Are there qualifiers, or is every customer right, so to speak?
No, I mean, if someone is in our place, they know that it's likely they're wrong, and at the very least, they want to be sure, that they're right, I guess. I think if we ask, a series of kind of loaded questions to understand first who the client is as a demographic, like what their sensibilities are, what their tastes are, because that's data we need just to have a good relationship with the client, right? All of the rest of our questions are about understanding their audience and understanding really what motivates their audience to act. And so whether that's product design, we want someone to physically pull this bottle off a shelf and look at it more or purchase it immediately or whatever, all the way to, what value propositions is a certain nonprofit delivering on, and what does their target market really, desire? What's going to resonate with them in terms of messaging?
Okay. So in terms of really,
So,
I guess.
I'm sorry, like I kind of veered off course there. It's coming back to me.
No problem.
What would disqualify data from a client, I guess, is data that is too obviously self-serving or based on their very singular perception, right? So on one hand, when it comes to like making this choice about what bottle to be in, right? What do most people want? Like, you can always err on the side of majority, right? Like, you are in business. More sales typically is better, right? Like, but if there is some other feature of your product, it is more precious, or it needs to be more precious to attract a certain market, then that should color your decision the opposite way. But I think it has to be research based, like actual people, not just, I went to such and such place and I felt like this, so I think our logo should be whatever. It's like, what part of that has anything to do with your audience? All of those decisions have to start with who you're doing something for.
Okay. And that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, starting with really, again, back to the customer. And I guess, taking into account all the factors that exist with the customer, as you start to see maybe shifts happen within your customer base, like, is it meant to be an ongoing, is design ever meant to be like evergreen, or are you constantly trying to figure out what's better?
I think both, right? Like, the sustainability being a key factor of good design, and certainly of great design, you should always, as a designer, as a product maker, as a doer, I think, of anything, you should be trying to get it as right as possible, all things considered, right? I think if you're not trying to do that, what is, like, literally, what is the point of anything? Like, if you're not trying to do your best, you know what I mean? Design, though, is an ongoing practice, right? It is a study of humanity and how we behave. So because I don't know, some of our trend-based tendencies change, those things need to be restudied, and the design gets better when you stay focused on people.
Okay, I dig
So
it.
both.
So both. Yeah, and I think that's kind of, maybe that's a little hard to think about, as we have this sort of ever-changing world, and you consider, things that maybe are on trend or off trend, and, looking to try to fit within what you think the market is now, or you look at your competitors and it seems like, oh, well, hey, now they've just released, orange is the new black, or whatever, so now we're looking at changing everything to orange because that seems like the new hot. Where does that fall into what you do? I mean, should you design for now, or what it looks like now, or?
I think it depends on what your business is, right? Like, fashion-based goods certainly should rely more largely on current trends, right? Like, that's the nature of the beast. I think if you look at laundry detergent, right, like, they stick with a brand for 50 years and then change it and then change it again, and it doesn't really matter at that point. I think in some cases, once you have an established brand and then start to go into trend-based changes, it becomes a hamster wheel that you can't get off of, right? Like, especially if you're not really improving the design, you're like redecorating, right? But I don't know. I think it's literally always going to depend on the people who are using the thing. I hate to keep, like, beating that horse, but that's where those decisions lie, right? Like, if people are buying the coat, right, the winter coat that they want to last forever, you're going to design in enough physical utility so that it can meet that goal, right? But it also has to look a certain way. It has to have a certain fashion. So finding that balance would be a difficult task, right? But I think it depends on what your customer is seeking in the first place and what their priorities are. Would you rather have something that's more now or something that's more forever? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. So I want to take that one level further. Do you also think that if it's not broke, don't fix it, in that sense? I mean, like, is refreshing something worth refreshing if your current clients, seem to be buying at the rate that they always have?
So I mean, that's the most interesting part of design to me, is that at what point do we decide something is broke, right? A designer will never fix something that isn't broke. An actual designer, like, people, like, there are often times to rebrand. Like, we get hired for rebrands. The ones in effect that we do not feel require a rebrand, we don't do those. You know what I mean? Like, we don't sell the work just to sell it. But that's how we're positioned as a company. You know what I mean? Like, we've made the assessment on where can we draw the line, I guess, so to speak, on, like, what kind of work we're willing to do. And yeah, I mean, I think there needs to be a valid reason that stands up to critical review from like a professional designer what constitutes brokenness of a design, you know? Like new is not always better. But I think we should always be reviewing possibilities, you know what I mean? Because there may always be a chance to improve something.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I've dutifully picked out a just kind of an initial article that I found online that just kind of talks to their prescribed version of what bad might be. And so I'd love to get your just kind of quick thoughts on some of the things that stand out to you as maybe not as useful as perhaps when they were initially done. And so you'll see I'm kind of thumbing through what it starts with. We can go through a few of these. Then I have a local example that is offered their shot at being criticized, if you will, or at least reviewed for criticism. But can you see my screen? Is that happening?
Yeah.
Okay. So for example, this particular site, is there anything that stands out to you as maybe they didn't consider their audience as they were going through it?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything here is pretty bad, especially if it's a juice company.
Okay. I guess what articulated bad to you? Like, I think maybe that's a question of like, well, hey, maybe it functions or maybe it doesn't function.
You should probably not use copper, like pictures of metal in anything advertising juice, just off the top, right? If your name happens to include a metal in it, maybe already rethink that. But if it doesn't, like in this case, it's penny juice. And then they were like, penny, if you're not turned off yet, let's show you an actual penny. I think that's pretty bad. There's no picture of juice. There's no picture of fruit. It looks almost more like something for the welfare of children, like a shelter. Because I don't know, it has the wrong parts of like an ambulance chaser lawyer website. Like the larger phone number, these like really shouty leader in childcare juice, like it's just all wrong. And these kids are playing with paint? Like what, why? You couldn't find juice?
So really it's a mishmash of different things that are really doing nothing to articulate the product or the value of the product. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
It's all wrong. Every part of it.
Okay. And so I'm just gonna again thumb through and we'll find just a few, and like I said, then we can flip to something that's more local. But are you able to see this particular site?
Yeah, but I don't know what do they sell.
Looks like they sell Halloween items.
Yeah. I don't, well, I mean, I mean, everything here is bad. Like that, what's bad here is being covered on this website though, right?
Right.
Well, let's see somebody's that's not covered on this website.
Okay. So then we'll flip over to somebody's that is local.
We're going to talk about people I know now.
We're going to talk about people you know. He did offer up to be brought to the table. So.
All right.
So what I do know about this initially is that, and I did attempt to help fix some of these things, but I am no designer. Yeah, so this was built in WordPress. It was built off of a theme that was purchased, and initially was kind of derived from the owner's own ability to edit or construct from their whatever skills that they had. So that's kind of what we have to start with, and maybe you can help me kind of see what stands out as just kind of counter or doesn't help or could be improved upon. And so this pop-up that just showed up, that happened automatically.
The pop-up is already off to a bad start, especially this early in the game. Like, I don't know where I would be in the scroll at this point for it to come up, but it's just not. I would rather, I mean, pop-ups in general are bad business. It's just kind of already violates best practices. So don't do that. Like, and again, like we can't do a show of hands, and I have no idea how many people are even listening, but if you have shopped online for something, right? Like, I would challenge you, go do it yourself. Like, go to the website where you normally buy stuff, and compare it to your own. Like, 9 times out of 10, the website you most frequent to buy things is going to be better organized than any random website. Like I mean, a very sweet gentleman. I love the guy, but this website is not the way.
Yeah.
Because it is failing to take the customer's point of view into perspective, you know, or into account. Like, if I at your website, what do you need to show me first? What do I want to see first? That's how you answer that question, always and forever. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So if I'm at, I don't know, like, I would need another example, I guess, but if you go to, I don't know, you go to YouTube, right? Like, they're showing you what you're probably most interested in right away. I don't need to know all about you. Like, show me your product. You know what I mean? When you walk into a store, you don't have to sift through a bunch of history of HEB before you show me the toilet paper. Like, just show me the shit, right?
Okay. And so, like, as we move through the site, we have sort of an introductory video, which may or may not be great or good. And we have product shots, and then sort of a where to find me products. And so it looks like some of these labels don't feel standard. Is that okay? Is that like, is there a standard for, you know, if everything is bad, should it all be bad in the same way, or should it all?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, you want consistency across your products. And I mean, granted, I've talked to Mike about this specifically for his brand, but like, I get it. I know why it happens. My point always, though, is like, consider these things as early as possible. Do not wrap your bottle in something you haven't really given that consideration. You know what I mean? Like, everything we make is ultimately going to be trash anyway, right? But you want not only to sell product, but something that's going to feel right on somebody's shelf. You know what I mean? Like, this is an age of where, like, people don't want to even do stuff if they can't show other people that they've done it, right? So give people something worth taking a photo of. Wrap your product in, and especially if you're in it on some, like, you're a true believer in your product, like, you can make kimchi better than anybody, right? Like, your label should reflect that.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, how do you feel about really, I guess, the articulation of a site like this? Like, if this was just, you know, one page, is having an ordered list of what you should do important, or what a product does for you important? Having, you know, maybe product information or testimonials, or...
That's what I'm saying. Like, I can't give you a silver bullet answer. Like, no, it's not important to have this, or yes, it is, right? Like, yes, it is sometimes for some products, because that's what the customer of those products cares about. You know what I mean? Like, if your customer is the type to read a random testimonial on a website for a product and say, that makes sense, like, oh, Tony Brinson, I don't know who the hell that is. There's not even a photo of him, but, like, I'm going to trust what he said about Bloody Mary. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, reviews make a whole lot of sense on Amazon. I think on websites for small batch, or even, you know, mid-level consumer products, who are these people? Jules McCool's? For real? You know what I'm saying?
Right. Okay. Do you
But
mind? Go
that's what I'm
ahead.
saying. There is no blanket answer, because maybe for your demo, like for your customer group, they're like, yeah, cool. I believe Tony Brinson and Jules McCool.
Okay. I dig that.
Is that a real person?
Could be. So could be an Amazon customer. I
I'll
don't know.
Google them after the call.
So this is like a product layout of the page, and I know that many owners are guilty of having sort of the non-standardization of products as they lay them out on their shop page. You know, as a consumer, you know, what is that? How do you feel that articulates to you? I mean, you know, say that you're interested, you bought it or you tried it, and you say, you know what, I want to go get it. I don't know where to get it, but I'm going to go and try to start online. Is it a, do you have any information or insights on, you know, what is a turnoff to a customer, especially if they've already bought from you before? Is this it, you know, is this something you overcome if you already have a relationship, or is this like defining that maybe what I put in my body before doesn't feel legit now? Or is that even something you can reconcile or understand?
I mean, all of it matters, right? It's like, if you provide too much friction for your customer to make a decision, they're gonna just go elsewhere, right? Like, and yeah, certainly relationship comes into play. If they've met, if you've been buying at the, you know, in person at the farmer's market, and then you finally decide, okay, it's COVID times, I still want to have my, you know, whatever, pickle shots or something, right? Like, you're gonna do the digital part.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're gonna be like, oh, look, I didn't know they made all these different products. But now it's like, how different are they? You know what I'm saying? Like, why do some look like they're from different eras in time from the other?
Okay.
And so, you know, you have to make those decisions on how to solve that friction based on all the aforementioned kind of criteria, right? Like, how much does it cost you to just destroy those labels and put the new mark on them? You know, how
Yeah.
much does it cost you to destroy all of them and streamline all of them, right? Like, that's how everybody makes these decisions. Like, the big boys, you know, in the game, big girls in the game, like, Coca-Cola and Pepsi are not going to change things if it costs more than it's worth, right?
Right. Yeah.
But
So
in the times that they think, you know, throughout the 80s and 90s, we saw them doing all kinds of weird stuff, right? Like, those two brands specifically had, like, you know, bucks you could accumulate and like weird gamified purchasing things. Like, I think all told, they would have still split the market evenly, but they spent a ton of money and made a bunch of money. It's just, you got to figure out what's right. Like, what's right for you, I mean.
right. So I'm going to go ahead and stop share for a second, and I'm going to pull up something that is a little bit more launch essay focused and see if you can provide some insight on that. So, you know, for example, let's say that I'm not quite at the website level yet, but I'm doing maybe visual communication through like a newsletter or something like that. That's what I'm going to pull up just to see if you know, what your thoughts are on just general communication as it relates to, you know, communication. I just said that twice. Sorry, I'm trying to find it. Give me 1 second.
It's all about communication.
So I guess in this moment, I'd love to hear, you know, what were some of the lessons that you learned coming up that dictated to you, this works and this doesn't work, or this maybe should be reviewed and this shouldn't be reviewed? Are there any sort of standouts that you were taught or that you picked up in realizing that certain things tend to work or certain things don't tend to work?
I don't know that I could enumerate any in that way. I guess I think in a general sense, like, there are problems that you encounter often that get solved in the same way very often, right? So those become like second nature. So like hierarchical listing of type, right? The same way. And for me, I don't invent anything. I go look at somebody who did it better, you know what I mean? And then try to tease out why it's better. I think that's a much easier way for me to learn than having somebody kind of dictate rules to me. And I think it's important in that process to question those rules, right? It's like, so then you can get to a new solution that may be better. But so if you look at, you know, books, right? Like books are set in a certain way. Like books that make you feel uncomfortable when you read them, they're wrong. They are designed badly. The books that you pick up and immediately can just start reading, that's your optimal design for a book. You know what I mean? So somebody has already done it better than your bad attempt at your website, more than likely. You know what I mean? Or your newsletter or whatever it is. If you're just starting a business, right? Like chances are there exists a better example than what you're already attempting to do. So go research, go like study the elders and see what works and what doesn't. You know what I mean? Like the easiest way to get better at that part of it is just emulating what works. The downside to that is if you don't know why it works, you're often going to pick the wrong solution for a similar problem, right? Like in the case of Magic's Food, I think there are layouts going on that page that are very appropriate to other kinds of products or other kinds of businesses even. You know what I mean? Like for a service related business, it might be more appropriate for a testimonial that is then verifiable, right? Or it's a testimonial from some local thought leader about joining a certain organization. That kind of thing makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that. So I'm going to pull up, share screen real quick again, and try to pull up hold up, I don't know where to put it. The email I was just looking at. Okay, here we go. So I think in this case, this is an email communication, and I'm fine with putting us on blast for being wrong. Can you see this? This is one of the newsletters that we sent out recently about fall programming. And so, you know, in this particular medium, the goal is to educate the client on what is becoming available. And so we've utilized a number of different images to really kind of like accentuate that something new is coming. We've tried our best to, you know, include information that links through. But you can see it's kind of long, and it looks like, you know, there might be different fonts or different colors used. And so, you know, if I was trying to make this better, if I was trying to be more informative, where did I mess up? Like, should I have just started at something brand new? Or, you know, I don't know if you can help me understand in that communication.
And with you as the very specific use case, I think content this long, especially on a predetermined schedule, like you're publishing individual dates for a calendar, you can host the calendar somewhere else, you know what I mean, and deliver to my inbox the at a glance kind of thing. Like, okay. I don't need all the data, all the metadata, all the graphics, like, but again, I think there are probably people in the audience for this and in the recipient list that like, this is exactly what they want to see. You know what I mean? Like, I expect this one email and I want to get every single possible thing. I don't know, anything critical that exists only in a visual, like in a static image and does not exist in text, you're already kind of messing up, right? Like there are people who cannot see who do in fact receive email, which is, I know, crazy, right? But it's 2020 So if you want to communicate with all people, you need to provide machine readable and human readable content, right? But so, yeah, I mean, the sheer length of this and the supporting graphics, I think, are excessive.
So less is more.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys do, or I should say we even do a really wide range of programming, and there are a lot of different people involved. So it's hard to say what gets prioritized over the other, what's the big message. But again, like other people, there are a bunch of different solutions for that, right? It's like you can do more frequent emails with less content, but more timely, right? Like this is saying, what is the date span here from earliest event to latest? You know what I mean? If you do that in half and double the frequency, then you already have shorter emails. Not everybody wants more frequent things though, right? So you can do at a glance, click this link and go to our calendar. Or you can start subdividing into multiple lists, right? So if you're interested only in this category of thing, you get this list and so on.
Mm-hmm.
It always comes down to who your target is though. Like, and it's hard to research that stuff, but, and again, like, or not maybe again, but it is also all theory until you put it into practice, right? Like, we don't want to kind of err on that side, but like in practice, you literally have to hope that you're right, put it out, and see what happens behind it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You're gonna know, especially in product design and packaging, if that product doesn't sell, you know pretty immediately something's wrong. People will buy anything, like literally anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to take you into another example. Go ahead. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, dude.
Okay. So this is another in-house, I don't have any money, but I'm putting it together sort of thing. And this is something that is an event that we do once a year. And, the idea is to, educate people that an event is happening, that it's meant for other people, or rather entrepreneurs, and, that there are a number of different sort of dates and styles to everything. Oh, what do you know right there? So I don't know if there's anything that maybe even this could articulate in terms of viability, usability, sustainability, or just in general, if it just doesn't really help anybody.
I mean, it's not terrible. I think the overall tone is a little strange, but I don't know all the details of your audience, right?
Right.
I think the only thing that screams like this is not a good idea is not being able to see your whole image when you have critical text in there.
Right.
Like whatever that hashtag is that's getting cut off is a problem. And your button, if it's a button on your website that does something, it needs to look like it does, not like a mistake. It can't be said over some text. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not a different enough color palette or color value to stand out from the background enough to let me know that this is a clickable item.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. So and if I did click it, I'm not even sure if it works. Let's find out. This is the sort of ticket registration that you would see. And, does it matter that these things are not standard?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes it harder to understand what's happening. Like, I would expect bonus would come after day 1, 2, and 3. Bonus sounds like bonus, so let it be bonus. 1, 2, and 3. Like if we're reading from left to right and then down, what kind of sense does this make to skip the middle?
Yeah, I guess that totally makes sense. So I'll take it.
Like a quote unquote designer was messing around here, and they were like, it looks weird not having them symmetrical, right? But they've solved the wrong problem. They solved a very personal issue with asymmetrical layouts and broken the format of how people read content, at least in this country, like by our standards.
Okay.
Our de facto kind of how we get through content.
So yeah, so Yusuf is he just added a few things from Facebook in addition to what you said. So call to action button should not match the color of the brand. Less is more. ADA compliant is a good thing, and there are a number of different tools that you can use for ADA compliance. So so yeah, I mean, I'm not a designer. I just kind of tried to throw this together to make ends meet.
Right. It's okay.
I guess when is it not okay would be my next question.
I'm saying not everybody is a designer, and that's fine. But the results you get, as varied as they are, that's why they're going to vary.
Okay.
Right?
I mean,
like
yeah,
if you do better, you will receive better. If you present better, you'll get better. Like, that's how humans make decisions on what they're going to do with their time. We all judge books by their covers. Don't judge people by their covers, but you can judge books by their covers. You should. Save us all a lot of time.
Okay. So this is another quick take, and this is actually through Shopify. And this is a site that I was helping put together for a friend. And this actually, Shopify as a tool is about 1,000 times easier to play with than WordPress, which is what I did the San Antonio Entrepreneurship Week site in, and what our Launch SA site is built in. And I feel like the more complicated the tool, the more likely I am to mess it up. So
that's how it works.
Yeah, that's how it works. So this is, I think, a more simplified, I might even go ahead and say good to great site.
All right.
Do you have opinions?
I always have opinions. I think this is much better than we've seen so far, right? Like, I want to see the product right away, right? Like, it's common and standard practice to put a logo and thusly, and also, our redundant home link in the top left-hand corner. So well done. I don't know, like, resolution-wise what we're all looking at, but like, it seems large for where it is, but no big deal. Getting to the meat, Brushfire Farms, cool. I get who you are. I think it should say jam somewhere in that content and early. Right?
Even if it's not all jam?
Well, I'm looking at jam right now.
Fair. Yeah. So if I scroll down.
If it's going to be more than jam, then list those things. Jams, glazes, whatever, right? Salsas, preserved. I don't know. But listing only the core ingredient or flavor profile or whatever that is, like, I think unless it's a thing that is very obviously always going to be a certain kind of product,
mm-hmm.
You need to tell me what it is you're selling. So if you're leading with only jam, right? Like, go back up to that header, please. And thank you. All that stuff is jam. And what, a cola in the back, maybe?
It's a glaze in the back, but
yeah, who's to know?
I see. So
nobody knows unless you tell them, right?
Okay.
And again, for compliance, you want to have what is said in an image said in live text. You know what I mean? Like, readable text.
Okay. So and then so what I tried to do is I tried to lay out the format, which I thought would be pretty simple, which is header is the preview of the products, then we have like a sample of some of the products, and then we go into sort of, you know, who is this about, and really kind of keep it simple as that, with a slider at the bottom that, you know, ideally has some decent looking food product shots. Does that seem like short enough?
All these photos need some work, but yeah, I think this is like the bio section could probably be shorter on this page, and if you want to expand somewhere else, cool.
Yeah.
I think, and again, it's too optimized for selling, right? This is not, if the buyer, it has been found, really cares about everything that's here, then perfect. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Finding that middle ground though is like, that's what the whole job is. Can you say as much in fewer words? You know what I mean?
Right. And so, yeah, it's just products. And then we also added in a blog, which instead of just calling blog, I called it Good Eats. And so I tried to make this standard as well, but it is hard to get everything to be perfect.
That's fine. Like, this makes more sense because you have varying content here. These are abstracts for long form content. They're not abstracts for features of a product. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying it's not as simple as saying this is how text should always look, right? It's like, this is how text should look in these cases when the audience are these people. Does that make sense? Or when it's this kind of content.
Okay.
If you're doing a product comparison page, right? Like small, medium, large, or, you know, basic, enterprise, contact us or whatever.
Right.
By mere fact of presenting them all on the same page, you're asking your audience to compare line items. You're asking them to look like, here's the check marks, here's the X's, here's not included, here's included. So right. Your bottom call to action there absolutely should line up, unless you're trying to trick me. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and I'm not trying to trick you. So
yeah. So luckily, this understood. Like, this is longer form content. I'm gonna go here and read a story, right? Not every introduction to a story is gonna be the same length. I would like it to be, or at least the same number of lines, but again, like, not everybody's a designer.
Right. So Yusuf added a few other notes. He said, yeah, not everyone is a designer. That's why it's important to ask the designer expert. And then let's see, picture of all products or most popular product, just to give an idea to the website visitors. And then, he thought the same thing.
Again, like, if you've been to a website in your life, take note of it, right? Like, think, like, we call it like walking the Gemba, right? It's like, go to the actual place where the problem is and go walk around, go kick your feet around, go see where the loose gravel is, right? Like, where are you likely to slip? Where are you likely to get confused on where the exit is?
Yeah.
Where, you know what I'm saying? Like, how long does it take you to find what you're looking for in that kind of environment? And take notes, like, take notes for yourself, because you either consciously, if you're a designer, you probably do it more consciously, but like, I still buy stuff at random, you know what I mean? I'll still just reach for a product off the shelf and be like, maybe I'm interested in that. You know what I mean? Something about the context has led me to do that. So the more conscious you are of it in yourself, certainly the better you're gonna be at engaging it in other people. But that's how you can end up with better design always. I mean, better product, like, whatever it is you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, we don't make food and beverages products. We just train them.
That makes a lot of sense. So I want to see if anybody else would maybe like to, ask any questions. Like I said, I know that on Facebook, there are a few people watching that might have comments. There are also, Lika, I see that you're in this particular chat. I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to ask that might support your own journey. But I'd like to kind of open it up to see. I've kind of shown off my varying degrees of skill, which range from I probably shouldn't have tried at the beginning to, hey, that's not awful. And I guess that's, that's like a starting point, I guess. Like if I was to transition into design, I mean, how bad do I need, is there a school I need to go to, or is it, at this point too far gone? Where do people start with this stuff? Like if you're a business owner and you're just trying to get something out and you have a low budget, like what do you feel is acceptable? What do you think are, maybe some things to just like, hey, baseline, if you're going to go out on your own, you should probably try to think of these things.
I mean, design is a practice of thought, right? Like it's not magic or, I don't know, otherworldly or anything. Like it starts with going and finding out what your actual problem is, like from your audience, right? So like the easiest shortcut, I guess, is go find someone in your space that is a competitor. You know what I mean? Like y'all are competing for the same eyes or wallets or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And pick, like really sift through what they have presented. They have to be successful for them to be a fair candidate for that kind of research, right? But like figure out what is working for them. Why is it working? Who are their customers? You know what I mean? What do they look like? What kind of bedding do they sleep on? What neighborhoods do they live in? Right? Like all of those things matter. That's the profile of who you need to talk to. And I can't stress enough, if you have communicated anything to someone and they don't understand what you meant, it's your fault as the communicator, always and forever. If you didn't speak their language, that's on you. If you didn't speak in the vernacular they understood, that's on you. Like you're the one trying to get the deal done, not them. So it's your responsibility to speak to them in the way that is most comforting or most informative or whatever it is, because to elicit the response you're requesting. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Okay, it looks like, if there are any other questions, it looks like someone else just joined as well. So I don't know if you have any specific questions that you'd like to ask as well, but I'm gonna give it a couple minutes. I'm also gonna try to show one more site if I might. So yeah, I guess that, I mean, it all comes back to the customer, right? Like that's maybe the too blatant realization is like, maybe you're not the guy, and like you should go talk to the customer to find out what they want. It sounds like it's almost too obvious.
It's almost too easy. But that's what I'm saying. Like I wish there was a way to charge for the secret knowledge of being a good designer, but that is literally all of it. Like how good you are at that absolutely determines, you know what I mean? Like your success as a designer. But to be a designer, to design anything, you just have to listen to what people need, what they're requesting. Like understand the context, all the things, and then you can figure out a better solution.
Awesome. Okay, so it looks like Lika is willing to show off her site. So I'm going to pull that up real quick. And yeah, trial by fire. So let's see.
Well, and I would say, like, I wouldn't ever approach a critique of anybody's stuff to be like punitive, right? Like it's a practice. So please don't, or I will make sure in my language that I'm confident I have not said anything that's unwarranted or mean-spirited.
So yeah, this is In the Weeds Natural Skincare, and I can kind of thumb through it. I don't know if there's anything that stands out to you initially that you'd bring about, but if you want me to stop at any point, just let me know.
Okay, hold on. Let's go back up to those testimonials. So these are cases where testimonials might make sense, right? Like these, just scrolling through, this seems to have some at least pseudo or quasi health benefit, right? Like perhaps not biological health or physiological health, but I don't know, like general self-care, whatever. Qualifying these people with a title of some sort, I think makes testimonials a lot more valuable, right? For your audience. I don't know what an aesthetics instructor does or a cosmetology instructor does. Like, I mean, I know what both words mean, and I know that you could be instructive in one of those categories, but I don't know what the knowledge base is there, like what the actual curriculum is involved in learning about cosmetology, right? But I think if I'm the target here, I have to assume anyway that because it's here, the target knows what these people are or do, or they aspire to be one or whatever. So it feels like it makes more sense anyway as a qualifier instead of just like satisfied customer. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like it feels like these people are a lot more likely to exist.
More likely than Jules McCool's.
Yeah. I mean, what a dope ass name though. I hope that person's real.
I'm sure they are. Okay. So, you know,
say a bunch of things that were done well, right? Like there is no pop-up. Like if I'm interested in your product, show me where I can sign up for a newsletter. Don't beat me in the face with signing up for a newsletter, right? Like
that looks like
what do you want your customer to do on your site anyway? Do you want them to sign up for a newsletter or do you want them to buy your product? And then, you know, what is the higher priority, right? So like make it available, but after you've given me some ability to buy something. Yeah, like this is good. I see a product maybe, or at least like, I don't know, you know, I guess that's a crystal candle or a candle or some kind of balm or it looks like everything here makes sense though.
Okay.
Like I think if I'm here for natural skincare, if a candle is not that, I don't like, are these candles that you burn like for like a candle? So I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like if I were instructed by someone, go to this website and go buy me natural skincare, like balms, salves, or whatever, it's a little misleading, I think, maybe to not lead with that. But again, it comes down to your customer, right? So if you're selling these like hotcakes, front and center is where they belong.
Right.
Especially it's a qualified audience already. If they've hit this website, they have searched for certain products, right? Or they've been referred directly to it.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know, it looks like the flow is a shop now, but this leads specifically to one product. Then newsletter, then I guess quote, and then some featured products, which, you know, have different stuff. And then there's this kind of type thing that's happening here. Testimonials, and then sort of a showcase of how the product is made, which is really, I guess, nice. And then social media, and then finally the sort of a click through to all products. Does that, everything seems more or less in order to you in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's nothing that stands out like this is definitely in the wrong spot. I think scale and type use and, you know, photography and all those things matter here. and they're always going to matter for like a lifestyle product, right? Like there's less wiggle room, I guess, on how much you can get wrong, so to speak, if that makes sense. No pressure, but I'm saying like there needs to be like consistency is key, right? Like in how you refer to your own company, your products, all those things.
Okay. And then something that I think a lot of people look at is the responsiveness of sites. And something that Yusuf brought out is that it may not function the same on
Well, so I know for a fact Mike's Magis Food looks, I mean, it's worse on mobile than it is on a desktop, than how we looked at it. And so again, like, how are people buying your product? Are they going to be on their phone, or are they going to get on a computer or an iPad or whatever? Are they on Android or mobile? Like, all this data can be found, you know, like, especially if you already have a website up, you can see where your traffic's coming from and from what device, or at least what, you know, kind of profile of equipment they're using. But for, I don't know, for the amateur or prosumer or whatever, like, just think about your customer. Know your customer. All of those data points that everyone quotes, right? Like metrics for a site and how much user engagement and all that, all of those things are just trying to determine who the customer is. That's it. So if you have a shortcut to get that data, like you live with them, or you go to school with them, or you work with them, or whatever those things are, then use that to your advantage. You know what I mean? Like, you can skip the more formal data collection in the beginning if you have enough range of personal data.
Awesome. Lika, I don't know if you have any specific questions that I mean, Darby kind of gave a quick review of what you had going on here, but is there anything specific that you'd like to kind of capture from his insight?
No, thank you so much for going through my site. I had it muted, but I was laughing out loud when you said, like, a candle that you light. Like, yes, like a candle that you light. The banner in the front that says "Need some good juju" does get changed, you know, probably every quarter, so that it'll go to another product. But I am kind of on the fence about rebranding the business. Well, I'm leaning towards rebranding just because my name has been In the Weeds Natural Skincare, but we've obviously started this really big candle kind of craze, especially with those crystal candles. So we might be changing it to like In the Weeds something else, or maybe it'll just be In the Weeds. So, but the other.
Sorry, let me just jump in real quick. The decision to include a product offering in your business name or in your logo is always tough, right? I would suggest most people err on the side of not doing it from jump, right? Like, because it is, if you ever need to pivot out of that product or pivot out of that market, even in a lot of cases, you have to, you end up losing the equity you've already created, right? Because now you need to, like, we're crawfish and beer, or whatever, or we can't serve beer for 2-3 years and it still says beer on the door. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's a decision you should weigh based on kind of what your total product line is going to be. You know what I mean? So if it's natural, something else care, right? Like body care, full self, I don't know, whatever. But you understand what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, like apothecary or wellness or bath and beauty.
Those are good lanes to be in.
So that's, I know that the person I had been talking to on the side had said that she kind of thought that we should just get rid of natural skincare altogether and just leave it. But I kind of feel that so many years in the beginning, maybe I'm just holding on to it, but it's saying skincare or natural skincare kind of helped people know what, because they were just like, in the weeds, what is that? You know, so it kind of helped with where are we going with this?
Right. Well, and I think there are ways to solve for that also, right? Like you can be in the weeds apothecary and then have bulleted points that say skin, wellness, you know, whatever, right? Like as categories of types of provisions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think what is good right now is that your website is simply called Shop in the Weeds. So you don't, like, the things that are the least flexible are already in good shape, right? Like having to change your domain name would be uncool.
Horrific.
But right now, it's just a graphic. You know what I mean? If you keep the same color palette, you keep roughly the same imagery, I think you're going to be in good shape even with a different tagline or combination of tagline and bullet points or categories of service or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I'm happy you do.
The other thing I was going to say though was just, I remember the question I had from a long time ago. So you were saying how some businesses will stay in business for 50 years and then they'll rebrand. And at that point, it doesn't really matter because they've already gotten that following. They've already been in business. It's almost like it really doesn't change
Right.
anything. For other small businesses that haven't been in business as long, how long or how often do you think that a brand should, or a business should refresh the brand or rebrand? Is there like an average?
I would suggest there probably is an average, but I wouldn't be able to tell you what it is. I think I would always handle them case by case and determine, you know, I think it depends on the size of the rebrand or like how different the change is, because that's going to determine. It's like if Pepsi went from how they look now to being red and white, like Coke, right? That's a severe change that ends up costing them all of their equity. Like it would lead to pretty big consumer confusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's too natural to reach for the red and white can than the blue and white or whatever Pepsi uses. I don't know. I don't drink Pepsi. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
so I think you have to gauge it based on kind of what you may sacrifice. And that's really the only gamble there, but it's easy enough to correct when it's early, right? And I think when we think about the lifespans of businesses in general, and certainly in the consumer product space, like if you're in your first 3 years, there's no time like right now to just go ahead and do it, because your expectation hopefully is to remain in business another 3 and another 3 and so on, right? So if your aspiration is to be a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi, rebranding in your first 3 years is nothing. That's like maybe, you know, in the toddler years or whatever, like, or pre-toddler even. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand.
Like I know that, you know, even from past experience, like it feels a lot more expensive in the beginning. Like every single decision feels like,
Oh, sure. Yeah, for
you
sure.
know what I mean? It's like the most expensive thing you've ever bought just for some, like, to do the next part or whatever. But I think as soon as a product has the appropriate fit, as long as you're doing the other stuff right, you're off to the races, right? Like people buy stuff. It's just what we do. So if you get it right, you're right for a long time. You know what I mean?
So I know you didn't go through like a lot of the products, but when you're going through mics, and you know, I adore Mike, but I did notice the thing with the labels, how they look so different, because that is just like an OCD of mine, especially since somebody pointed out some inconsistencies in mine, and now it's like all I can look at,
Right.
because I didn't really notice it. I was too in it, you know, to
Yeah.
like really see it, and then now somebody has told me, and it's driving me insane. So my logo went through a couple changes, but now it's kind of like we're already going to make new labels to put UPC codes and all this other stuff. And if we're going to make them once, we might as well just purge and do them all. So that's just the only thing. I'm just like, everything that has my logo on it is going to change. Right. This is going to be a big process.
No, and that's kind of to my point, right? Like if you if you're at 20 products and it's like, man, this is gonna suck to drop all these labels and start from scratch. Imagine what it's gonna be like at 40 products, right? Or
I'm at
100
40.
products or whatever it is. And so, and I think in a lot of cases, like when you start, we can't know what we don't know, right? And you don't know that it needs to be known. But the job of good design is to put you in the best possible position to put off expensive decisions for as long as possible, if not indefinitely. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But to do that, we have to start from a place of knowledge, like knowing about your customer.
Exactly.
If you've got product in the market though, like in any capacity, you have a direct line to that feedback though. You know what I mean? So start collecting it and taking it into account, and then you're going to already be in better shape.
Definitely going to be, that's the first phase of all of it, is just kind of doing some market research. And
yeah, like all of that stuff sucks, right? Like I think it's fun sometimes, or for some people to learn stuff like that, but it also sucks to hear uncool things about something you put your time and effort into and it's not hitting the mark like you might think, or maybe it is, right? And that's good news. But all of that data collection is super valuable, especially early on. You know what I mean? Like if your day one customer, so to speak, like if you do right by them, they're only going to grow for you. You know what I mean? You may find in talking to them that they're not actually your optimal. They want too much of a thing that is too expensive to make, right? Like it just doesn't line up with your business, like the bottom line number. But you would never know that without talking to them, right? Like, so it's better to know and then decide than, aiming, like shooting in the dark.
Yeah, you had mentioned earlier about how some people would want, like, that you made the scenario that's exactly happened to me. We're like, oh, can we have this in a bigger jar, or can we have this in travel size? And we started making in travel size because we started doing lots of shows downtown, but we were doing the same amount of work in jarring and labeling to sell something that was half the price. So it didn't really make sense to do it. So then we just did it on the website, but then it ended up being something we pulled and so many people asked for it. But I'm just like, if we're still making this by hand and labeling by hand, this doesn't really, it's not adding up. As much as people are asking for it, it's not really working out.
And I think you can do, there are times in the year, sometimes where if you're flush with profits, right, and you want to test a new product, test it on a small batch in the large size. Know that you're going to lose your money if you need to, but you can always gauge, traction, right? Like see what customers are going to clamor for. And then again, like put that decision off, right? Like if you're Amazon, you can make everything in every single size possible because there is a buyer out there for it, right? Mm-hmm. But if you don't have your facilities like that, or your, product manufacturing capabilities or supply chain or whatever, like you just can't from a financial level. And it doesn't make sense to.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to learn the hard way.
Totally.
Well, thank you so much for your input.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for your questions.
I dig it. So I realize that we're right at the 3 o'clock mark, so I want to honor that. Is there anything else that you'd like to say or that you think would be helpful, or not? That's fine too, Darby, before we close.
It would be helpful if people voted. I think that's all I have. Vote in your local election. Vote in this election right now. Like go, if you live in San Antonio, you can go today. Go vote. That's all. And thank you all for having me. Thank you, Ryan, for inviting me.
Thank you, Darby. I appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining. Darby, thank you so much for sharing and participating and giving your thoughts. If you like more content like this, we are doing a lot more digital content. So feel free, if you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, you can do that, or you can just follow us on Facebook or wherever people watch things these days. So like the TV. Anyway, thank you, and have a great rest of your day.